Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Small Screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian Mush. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson,
Hello.
and we are here to talk about today Star Wars The Bad Batch, Season 2, Episode 3, The Solitary Clone. Great episode. Can't wait to talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. Lots to unpack here. To be fair, I was doing my notes while also watching a hockey game, so probably why it took a little bit longer, but the reason I mention that is there's actually quite a few. Let's see here. It's 4.5 pages of notes. Sorry, 5 pages of notes.
Whew.
And that's a lot for a half an hour episode. It's a little longer than
Yeah.
an average episode. I want to say it came in at like 27 minutes or something like
Yeah, it
that.
was like 29. It was almost half an hour.
Yeah, which honestly, it needed that extra time. So I'm glad that
Mm-hmm.
they didn't um, uh, skimp on the minutes, which I feel like last season there was a lot of episodes where I was like, I feel like it could have been a little bit longer. Like we could have used a little bit more
Right.
meat on that bone. So that's appreciated. This is an episode directed by Saul Ruiz, so not directed by Dave Filoni, and supervising director Brad Rao, who's been around a long time. Written by Dave Filoni and Jennifer Corbett. So it's written by the same two people who wrote last week's episode, so that's not necessarily surprising. What is surprising is it's always funny to me how few people are on the cast list for the show, because really it's just D. Bradley Baker doing like 95%
I
of the
know.
voices.
I wonder if
So
he ever gets like bored just like talking to himself.
I was wondering if he gets paid per role.
He
You know,
must.
does he get paid? You know, does
It's
does
probably like per line of dialogue or like per
oh yeah, that's probably that makes more
like
sense.
minute of dialogue or
Yeah,
something. Yeah.
I don't know how I don't like I'm not I don't know the business of voice acting, but it seems
Mm-hmm.
like you would need to be like, I don't know, maybe like a line from Hunter is worth more than a line from like a no name clone or something like that. I don't know. I don't know. But anyway, there is an interesting addition to the cast list today in this episode. We'll get to that in a minute. But before we get into this week's episode, a couple things to remind the folks at home about. One of them being that we're quickly approaching the, I want to say, 6th annual, maybe more than that, Toby Awards. I should really know that. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna look that up while I'm doing this. But this is a very prestigious event. It
Right.
is widely anticipated by everyone who listens to the show. Actually, even those who don't, I'm sure, get excited about the Tobys. I mean, everyone knows about it. And it is a celebration of the best of the 6th annual. Yeah, I was right. Of the best of the previous year. So sometimes we've done it like last week of December. Other times we've done it in January. This year it's fallen into January. We're almost halfway through. So it will be this month. Rachel, have you started thinking about the movies you watched this year?
I saw Avatar last night, so
Oh
that
yeah,
helps my
that
list of like
helps.
maybe
Yeah,
3 movies I've watched this
yeah. You
year.
only need to get 3. That's
I'm
right.
not like depending on the movie, I'm not like a new release buff for a lot of things. It depends what it is. Like I
Uh
don't
huh.
feel the need to like see something the second it comes out. Um
Huh. What's that like? I don't know what that feeling's like.
it's cheap. It's a lot cheaper than having to go see movies all the time.
Yeah, I guess I'm a Cineclub member. I don't know if you know this.
Oh, big deal.
It's not actually. It gets you 20% off um, concessions, and that's about it. That's about it. You pay $10 a month to get 20% off concessions, and then you get quote unquote free movie tickets. But really, you're just getting one free movie ticket a month, which is the cost of your membership. Um,
Right.
and then you still have to pay extra to see like IMAX and all these other things. So really, I'm not. It's really not a good deal at all. I don't know.
It's
Really, I
really
don't know.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
unless you're
Uh,
seeing like a ton of movies.
yeah, you get it. I mean, I don't know. This 20% discount thing. Oh, and also, I don't know if you saw this. They charge a ticket fee now when you buy tickets online for movies
What?
at for Cineplex. These bastards. They are the worst. Yeah, they charge a ticketing fee, and that ticketing fee is waived if you're a Cineclub member. So I feel
Oh,
like they invented that fee just to like create another thing that the Cineclub members get. You know what I mean? So
I mean, yeah, probably. That's yeah, I don't know. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to think about it. It just makes me angry.
Yeah.
That being said, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the Tobys. So that's coming up this month. That'll be on the main feed. So if you're just listening to the Small Screen Star Wars feed, we have a main feed that actually contains the Small Screen Star Wars stuff, so you can get both there. And I encourage you to subscribe to both. The Tower of Babel podcast, you'll find that there. You can head over to towerofbabel.ca/subscribe. You'll find links to anything, to anywhere that you listen to podcasts to get those subscriptions for. So that is exciting. Be prepared for that. Of course, we also have another film club coming up, and those are exclusive for our Patreon subscribers. And Patreon is free this month for the subscribers, the month of January. And we're going to be doing, what movie are we doing this month? You remember?
Oh, I don't know. Jeremy picked a weird one.
Oh yeah, it is a weird one. Hold on, I'm gonna look that up. It's like called like the Patriot or something like that.
No, it's not the Patriot. It's something. I can't remember.
The Soldier.
Spy. I think it starts with an S. We're the worst.
The Spy Soldier or something.
I don't know.
Something. Hold on, I'll pull it up here in just a second. It is the 1997 film by Philip Noyce, action thriller The Saint. So
The Saint.
It
okay.
is an S word. Yeah.
I was like, I knew it was an S word.
Yeah. So that's fun and exciting. And again, that's just for our Patreon subscribers, and you can find all that at patreon.com/TowerBabelcast and help keep the show afloat, keep the lights on, and all that fun stuff. So on to the episode as a whole. Now, I mentioned who directed this and who wrote this. I'll read the synopsis, the log line for this week's episode. Another short one, short but sweet. Clones battle against a separatist holdout. And to be honest, it kind of works. It's a little apropos because this episode, if you really think about the structure of it, is very simple. It's really not complex at all. There's not even a lot necessarily happens. There is some interesting action sequences that take place in kind of two main areas it is very cool. I mean, and just to be clear, I love this episode. In fact,
yeah, me too.
I'll just quickly read the tweet that I wrote about this episode because I thought it was. Hey, don't giggle. Listen, everyone. By the way, at Tower Babelcast on Twitter, if you want to get these hot takes. I even put a little fire emoji at the end.
Yeah, sometimes I yell at Julian on there too, so it's fun.
Yeah, it is fun. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I said that episode of The Bad Batch was incredible. It had the same foreboding tone the second to last episode of the Clone Wars did. I don't know if you guys remember that. That's the episode when Order 66 happens.
Yes.
The eerie strings and the burnt color tones all balance well with the character work. Cody was a highlight, and the action was extremely entertaining. So that is, I mean, my feelings on this episode in 240 characters. Almost exactly. I really, really, really liked it. But again, simple concept, and then they use that stage to tell a more complex character story. So, what were your overall thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, like visually, I really liked it. I felt that they did a lot of really cool, just cool things with the shadows and the lighting, and like I know it's not real lighting, obviously, because it's animated, but yeah, like you said, with the like burnt orange colors and like the dust everywhere, it was like, I don't know, visually it was very good. And then yeah, just like so interesting as a whole. I don't know how to word it, but it's very interesting watching Empire clones fight separate, like
quote,
separatists. Yeah, because it felt like the Clone Wars a little bit, but at the same time you're like, am I cheering for them? Wait, am I not? And it was like kind of like it felt like you wanted to cheer for them because they look like our old clones, and it's Cody, and they feel like the good guys, but they're not the good guys in this scenario. It was just so interesting. It's for me it was a kind of a, I don't know, it messed with my brain a little bit. And I just really enjoyed it. I was like, oh man, you're making me like feel things and think things about these clones, about whether
how dare you?
Like I can't decide if I want them to win this battle or not, right? Like and right up until the end, and then you're like, oh bummer. But
I mean, I think they do some really interesting things.
It's
with
great.
Like kind of like tricking your brain, right? So
the
music that they play as they arrive on Desix, the first as the Cody arrives on Desix for the first time is very reminiscent of the Clone Wars of
Yes.
kind of like a actiony, kind of upbeat. That quickly changes. The music is mostly gloomy, mostly at very again like so similar. In fact, it might be the same quote unquote. I want to say song, but that's not what you say. That's not what they're called. It's called a piece
Score.
Yeah, and I think it might be the same one that they use in that Clone Wars episode, and it makes sense why they would. I mean, it brings to mind Order 66 and all the feelings that come with that, and Order 66 gets a shout out in this episode. But they also do stuff like, I think this is really fascinating, where the color of Desix is red and orange, which we usually associate with evil and bad, right? And then they're using battle droids and all these things, but really, I think if you're watching this episode and you kind of, especially coming off of Andor, right, you really feel for the people of Desix more than you have feelings for the clones here, and they really flip that idea on its head and kind of show you what essentially was what is a Clone Wars style battle. This type of conflict happened on worlds constantly throughout the Clone Wars, but showed it to you from a completely different lens, through a different lens. You're like, maybe there's this line, of course, in the episode where she says that Dooku is right about everything. And of course, we'll get to that. She's right, and she's wrong a little bit at that moment, but they're really saying like, hey, the war was destructive. We didn't want to be a part of this. And as more and more worlds were roped into it, it really just caused more pain and suffering. And to a lot of people, especially the Separatists, their perspective is these are invading forces, and we don't want these people here. We're just defending ourselves.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So if you kind of look at the other Clone Wars episodes, and there's others where they kind of like hint at the idea that maybe if you look at it from another angle, it doesn't look as heroic all of a sudden. But most of the time, it's not shown that way. It's shown through that heroic lens.
Yes.
This is one of the few times that, and obviously on purpose, that they kind of turn that lens around, same side of a different, of the opposite side of the same coin, right? And show us that difference. I just think it was really cool. So yeah, let's get into the kind of the breakdown here. So we start at a planet that we don't know at first. We get it named later, but it is Desix. And it's an agrarian society. We got people like farming, and it's actually, I love the look of this like castle overlooking these like farmlands.
Yeah.
It's just like so imposing. It looks so evil, but it's it's not. It's actually like these are quite peaceful people. And there's a shuttle arriving. This governor Groton is being escorted by a team of TK troopers. As the shuttle approaches, alarms blare on the surface of the planet. People are running for scared and hiding inside their homes. The Imperial delegation arrives. It's greeted by three people. They're in masks and hoods, again using this visual language of these are typically the bad guys. And we are introduced to Tawny Ames for the first time, and she's kind of wearing a similar outfit that kind of like Leia kind of wears, which is a bounty hunter costume in Return of the Jedi.
Like her boosh, I think her name is in that.
Yeah, something like that.
It's something like that.
Yeah, and kind of it's similar, kind of like distorted electronic-y voice.
Yeah.
And anyway, the Imperials are here to quote unquote relieve her of her title of governor, and Tawny insists that they're not under Imperial jurisdiction, and that doesn't really go over well. I kind of liked his like, it's been received, reviewed, and obviously denied.
Yeah.
And they don't care, and they prepare to arrest her. But in response, Tawny activates a battalion of battle droids and actually seizes them and takes them on. We actually don't know what happens to the rest of those soldiers.
It's true.
They're probably executed. So
most likely. I like how they make that the Imperial governor there. They make him really not unsure, but he just like coughs a lot, and he just seems like he's really green, right? Like he's just kind of smarmy and not good at his job yet.
Well,
right?
He's it's a couple things. He's like nervous, obviously, as they're arriving, because I think he understands the situation that he's walking into.
Oh yeah.
And then we also find out later that this is like a real backwater planet, like very backwater. In fact, so much so I was thinking about it, I was like, why wouldn't there already be like an Imperial delegation there of some kind? If they were a part of the war, there would have been separatist, leadership potentially there. She's obviously a part of separatist leadership, and then, if there was a fight going on their planet, then presumably there would have been clones there to kind of quote unquote seize control. But there isn't, so they're kind of just living their own life. I think they expected this to happen, which is why they had these battle droids ready. But
yeah, because I feel like there's just like how there were Republic worlds that weren't really being attacked by separatists.
Sure.
So there's obviously separatist worlds that were kind of like relatively left alone because they didn't really matter that much.
Right.
Like,
we don't need this one castle and these 5 farm fields.
Desolate, like clay desert that it kind of looks like for most of it. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of like worlds that really weren't, not that they weren't as affected, but near the end of the war that maybe were just not as occupied yet or whatnot. So.
And they said that it was an outer rim planet, so it's far away.
Even Rampart later says something about how he wouldn't even normally care about it. Like, you'd just be like, whatever. But just because of this whole hostage taking thing,
I like how they reframe it too, right? They kind of totally flip it and kind of spin it, as being insurgents taking control of the city and yada yada yada. I think that's interesting.
As they always do.
Yeah, of course. All right, so that's the intro, and I think, I was coming into this episode, I was thinking about, okay, the trailer mostly for this season mostly featured episode 1 stuff. There's like a lot of episode 1 stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot, now in retrospect, a lot from episode 2 as well, including the line from Cody about questioning the order, about the bringing peace and order to the galaxy. There's a couple cool Cody lines in there, and a lot of that red, orangey visuals. And I kind of thought, I was like, oh, you know what? I'm guessing before we came into this episode, I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna guess that we're gonna actually start on that red world of this episode, and it's gonna be very different. And I was kind of right in my guess here, and because we do start there, and this episode is very different. It's very interesting that we don't see any of the rest of the main cast. I actually even wonder, and I was chatting about this on the Discord channel. Of course, you can join the conversation on the Discord channel by becoming a patron as well. One of our patrons mentioned that they found this episode to be much more evocative than the first 2, and I totally feel that. I mean, this is a much weightier episode.
I did as well.
Yeah. I'm wondering, a part of me wonders if they wanted to start with this episode as the first episode.
I mean, I guess it might be the argument there might be like, well, it's the Bad Batch, like you can't really start it and not have them in it. But
right, I think they might have swapped the order, because I can totally see this being, because it's longer, right? It's almost half an hour. It's action packed. It has a clone. It has Cody in it, so people get excited about that. And it's got a lot of that kind of some of that weightiness that we saw in Andor. So it would have been a natural kind of first episode, I think. Yeah. But maybe they got cold feet because it didn't feature any of the rest of the cast, right?
That, and I feel like it would be very hard to jump from this episode to that.
I don't know, actually, because they mentioned Dooku in this one, and then we go to his castle.
That's fair, I guess, but I just I don't know, to go from something so sort of dark and ominous and Cody leaving to just look at these crabs. They're chasing the Bad Batch. It might be a bit too ridiculous.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it's just as jarring the other way, I feel like, to go from that to this.
It's true.
So, I mean, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll probably never know the answer to that question, but I find it interesting. So anyway, we're on Coruscant, which I don't think we've seen Coruscant yet on the Bad Batch, I want to say. I don't think we have. And we catch up with Crosshair, who is the titular solitary clone. Now, I guess that's the question. This episode's called The Solitary Clone. I think it's obvious that Crosshair is being shown that as being lonely and isolated. But is there an argument to be made that clone, that there's more to that title than,
I think so.
Crosshair?
Because I think it fits with Crosshair, right? Because he is he's without his squad and he's not really accepted by the other clones either. But at the same time, with Cody going AWOL at the end, You know what I mean? It's kind of got that double meaning, I think,
Mm-hmm.
but it's yeah, I don't know if it's supposed to only mean one or the other, but I can see it sort of referencing both of them.
Yeah, I, I kind of, yeah, I think it's both, and I just
Yeah.
struggle with trying to put together the pieces for the Cody. I mean, Cody's he feels he's solitary because what he thought he understood about his role in the world is kind of turned on its head.
Well, yeah, and it's
Um,
like I'm curious about how much um what's the word? Like how much of his battalion is still with him
oh yeah, the
now
50, no,
too?
not the 501st, the 212th, I think.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
and he's got new armor now. He doesn't have his his colors anymore, right? So he's
yeah.
just I don't know. It,
Well,
it
his
just
armor is the
feels
same as it was; it's just painted
just
differently.
painted different. Yes, I
Yeah.
guess. So yeah, it's just I don't know. He's just not the
Well,
same. I don't know.
you could even make the argument that clones themselves are
Well,
solitary
yes, yeah.
because as well, and just the concept of a clone as being kind of like um there's more to this analogy I feel like we could dive into,
It is
but
funny, even though to have the concept of a solitary clone because there's so many of them and they're all the same. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, well, how can they be solitary if there's clones of each other?
yeah,
But
but they're inherently lonely because
no, I know.
I did there's something about that I find interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
again, obviously we'll concentrate on Crosshair here, who wakes up alone
yes,
in this in his like what would you call it, bunk, and I liked how the alarm that he wakes up to is kind of similar to the one that is blaring on Desix. So I think that's interesting. And we see him getting his breakfast, and we overhear two clones talking about the defense recruitment bill, which is being up for going up for voting again, and they hope it doesn't pass. So I find that this is a kind of a fun little Easter egg here, which is this like it's like how much were the clones aware of what was going on?
right, right.
I also wonder if these clones who are on Coruscant are aware that Camino was destroyed, like that there is no more clones being manufactured, right? That kind of thing. Um, because it's like, well, the obviously the defense recruitment bill is kind of pretty straightforward. It's a piece of legislation. It's a law that they're putting through the Senate. It's obviously, and again, this is a puppet Senate, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, it's whatever
Right.
Palpatine wants. To pay for the recruitment and training of regular people as soldiers,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
So, the TK troopers, the stormtroopers that we come to see them later on as. So, they mentioned that it's up for a vote again, which I find interesting. I guess there's maybe some political posturing that they've done by saying, "Oh, it didn't pass the first time" or whatever, and now it's got for vote again.
Well, yeah. But also last time, we never know. We don't know when the first time this vote happened. It could have been
Right.
before Camino being destroyed. So now
Sure.
it's
Sure.
like up for vote again, right? Being like, well, that is gone now. So
Yeah. And you
we
feel
got to
bad for
find a new way.
you feel bad for the clones, even though they're dicks to Crosshair. By because they're like, well, let's hope it doesn't pass for our own sake.
Mm-hmm.
Like I guess are they I guess this is kind of the whole point of the show, and it's why I love it so much. But it's exploring this concept of like, how much are the clones like thinking about and are worried about their future and where they belong and what their purpose is, quote unquote, with the war being over.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I'm trying to imagine a scenario where okay, it doesn't pass and we're just going to stick with the clones we have. Like that's not really a tenable scenario because you guys are aging out, the clones are,
Yeah.
and they have to be replaced with something. So,
Well,
or
yeah.
I guess they don't technically have to be.
Eventually, though, it's like if
the
you want an
Republic didn't
army.
have an army
Yeah.
for thousands of years, right? So,
Yeah, it's fair.
anyway, uh, so the two clones get up and sit down at another table when Crosshairs comes to sit down.
I mean, I would too, but that's because I know
is
more about him.
I also kind of like how he's in kind of like civvies, like he's not in his armor, and he's just kind of like wearing his like just regular ass
Yeah,
clothes.
it's interesting to me that he's still even his armor, like he's still in black armor.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like he doesn't even have normal
Like official
like
new armor.
yeah, it's interesting. It's like no, you still just have your black armor and
Well,
your black tunic.
it creates that visual storytelling,
Division.
right? It's like
Yeah.
here's the clones in white and you're in black, right?
Yeah.
You are
Yeah.
different from these people.
You're an
right?
outcast, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, he's called to the Vice Admiral Rampart's office. By the way, nice office he's got there. we're at the I guess this is on Coruscant, and this is a place we've seen before. It was heavily featured in the series episodes where Ahsoka is like being framed for the bombing of the Jedi Temple.
Right.
And she's like escaping custody, and that's when she's like escaping those dogs and like running away from all those stun stuff. It's basically the staging area. We've seen it also in the movies as well. But it's a military staging area. It's kind of where the clones live, quote unquote, on Coruscant. It's got that really cool military statue that we actually and kind of like I don't remember what they call it. We'll get to that in my notes, but that war memorial basically that they have with the clone statues on it. It's very cool. Anyway, so we see that in kind of a redesigned look a little bit with the kind of updated graphics. It's quite nice. But anyway, he's got an office that like is very very Palpatine-esque with the big window and the big chair and the big desk, very similar to Palpatine's like office in his when he's the Supreme Chancellor before he gets his fancy he gets to take over the Jedi Temple as his palace. But,
yeah.
Any thoughts on Rampart? I mean, we've again, this is kind of why I see this episode as potentially being the first one. We kind of catch up with Rampart here in a less kind of like clunky way where we just see him murder a clone at the end of an episode.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just typical Rampart, right? Like he's in his big evil guy office and he's like, oh yeah, here's your assignment about this place that I don't really give a shit about, but
right.
Yeah, just go and do what you need to do, which we all know is go and murder a bunch of people.
Yeah, that's what you're best for. Right?
Yeah, but yeah, I do like how they bring up kind of how long Crosshair was left on that platform on
32 days.
Yeah,
over a month he was there. I mean, we don't know how what he was living on. Maybe he was fishing.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
something.
who knows? But yeah, it's interesting, and it's like, oh, like he's almost surprised that he didn't leave, right?
Right.
Or like defect after that.
Luckily, he probably had access to a lot of fresh water. You just flip your helmet over, and it's raining there all the time, right? So
we don't know if that's salt or fresh water.
That's raining?
No, that's like around him.
Well, yeah, that's probably salt water, but the rain is probably fresh water, and it rains there constantly, right? So he's got at least he's got water, right? And you can survive a long time without food if you got water. So anyway, yeah, it is wild that he was there for 32 rotations, which they call days, which I've always thought was cool. And he's even asked, like, and I guess this is why he would need to be cleared for medical duty. He was probably near death by the time he was found.
Oh, most likely, yeah.
Yeah. And need to like build back up his strength and stuff. And he's asked why he came back at all, right? He was left there for dead. Why even return? And he replies saying that he's a soldier of the Empire, right? And he's kind of given like a nice kind of like, yeah, that's nice. Your loyalty's admirable, yada, yada, yada. Here's your new mission. Right?
Yeah.
And I just find it so interesting. I mean, Crosshair is such a fascinating character because he's being shit on constantly, right?
Oh, yeah.
The clones are shitty. You're the most loyal clone around, but clone loyalty is kind of not what it's worth these days, and all this, and all this stuff, and he gets no recognition for that. And to some degree, I don't think he's necessarily looking for that. Like he talks about being a clone soldier, and doing what must be done, and that comes without the glory typically. But I think to some degree, it's like death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he's been medically cleared for duty, and he's been given a new mission on a very remote planet where the newly appointed Imperial Governor has been taken hostage by insurgents, demanding that Desix be recognized as an independent planet. But of course, quote unquote, we do not negotiate. The only thing they didn't mention at the end there is we don't negotiate with terrorists. Which is really what they're saying, right?
Yeah.
And then of course, and it's like, okay, fair enough. I mean, I don't know how else you would respond to this as the Empire. But then the last line here, which is you're being sent in under the guise of a diplomatic mission, which is so. I mean, it's basically it is a war crime. It's one of many
Yeah.
that the Empire just does not care about. But of
Which
course,
they do all the
we've
time.
seen war crimes be committed by the Republic on a regular basis, so it's not really I guess it's
Yeah.
not really that new. And so Crosshair, we also find has been demoted and is not allowed to lead a squad after, I guess, the events of the season 1 scenario, especially probably when he got his face burned off.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah. And so he has to report to a new commander and is being told that he needs to meet at the Battle Memorial. That's what it's called. They don't want to call it a war memorial. Meet at the Battle Memorial the next morning. Or I guess later that day. It's unclear. So it turns, okay, so they get to the memorial, right? And it's like this beautiful wall with all this Arabesh on it, right?
Yes.
It's all gibberish.
Yeah, I was kind of reading that because I was like, I knew, like, because it's from like the Battle of Geonosis or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I couldn't remember if it actually said anything or not. And I'm like, I bet somebody deciphered this, but it's just apparently gibberish. But
yeah, so this is a couple times now we've seen Star Wars. In Andor, they used Arabesh to like put in Easter eggs, like the names of certain people and certain stuff. Now this is just gibberish. I'm wondering what the reasoning there is. Is just they don't have time to like list out because you could just put a bunch of clone numbers there, right, and just make it be pretty quick about it. Is it that they don't have time to do that, to like model that, to think about that, or is it that like are they intentionally sending a message here that like, hey, please stop reading every Arabesh thing? It's not all a thing, you know? Like, is that what do you think they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I did see some, not like theories, but people just being like, oh, like they could just be like Arabish letters in replacement for numbers. No, but like in replacement for numbers. So like whatever letter it is would actually be a number. It's a clone
numbers? Aren't there numbers?
I don't know. You'd have to
that's a good
ask
question.
a bigger
Star
nerd
Wars
than me.
Numbers.
I can't remember. So yeah, who knows?
I'll look it up.
But yeah, maybe it's a different language. Like it's not English. It's like Arabish for, I don't know, something else. Geonosian clicking language.
Oh yeah, maybe they're all just names of the Geonos.
That's why, yeah.
I'm probably not.
No, because they have names that are actually like kind of names, like Sunfac and
yes,
yeah. There's others, but
and others. Yeah, that big one that goes all the time.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm just looking at the numbers here. Oh yeah, so they do have numbers. In fact, we've seen the numbers because the number 9 is written twice on the helmets of the Clone Force 99.
All right, yeah. So it's just gibberish. Yeah, maybe they're just tired of people reading it too much. They're like, fuck, what? They're like, I'm not gonna write stuff on this big wall. We're just making it gibberish. Who cares?
The number 1, the number 4, the number 8 are all, and the number 7 are just those numbers. the rest are kind of like similar enough. 5 is like missing a line. 0 has an extra dot in it. 9 is missing a line. Same with 2 and 3, but and 6 is kind of the funniest one, but because it looks like a box with a line on top. But otherwise, it's pretty much basically almost exactly the numbers. So again, they could have, but they didn't, and I think that that's intentional. So just we'll keep an eye on that. So he meets. He's waiting outside. He's back in his armor, and he's waiting outside the memorial. And we hear him before we see him. Commander Cody greets Crosshair in his classic armor with the cool backpack thing and the shoulder radio and the like visor thing. He's got cool armor. I don't know what to tell you. And instead of his traditional orange, it's just repainted in gray. The accents are repainted in gray.
Yes,
and it's kind of depressing, to be honest, because the orange is much nicer.
He's not colorful. He's a gloomy dude.
That's right. And what I find it funny is the gray is apparently enough for Crosshair to say he didn't recognize him.
Yeah.
I can't tell if it's him just like getting in a little like a jab or whatever, but he's like, "Oh, I didn't recognize you at first." It's like, really, you didn't? I mean, he's the only one who wears that type of armor. Like,
right? Yeah.
There's literally no one else. And anyway, and there is still accent pieces. It's just They're just not orange this time. So anyway, I guess maybe the whole point is like I didn't recognize you, and you're not because you're not in orange, and that's what I associate you with, or something.
Well, yeah, probably.
And anyway, there's some chit chat about how things have changed, and how Cody requested Crosshair after he learned, like specifically after he learned he was cleared for duty. And it's kind of nice because you think about how that one episode of the Clone Wars of the final season, when the Bad Batch is introduced and Cody and Rex are there, and so are the Bad Batch, and so we know that there's a history. So I like this idea that Cody, like, oh hey, it's an old war pal of mine. We'll bring him into the. I know they're capable. We'll bring him into the unit. That'll be good for him. He's kind of like reaching out.
Yeah,
It's kind of a and although obviously Crosshair is not calling for help necessarily, calling out for aid, but emotionally. But I think from Cody's perspective, it's just an opportunity to kind of like support a friend, I guess, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess this really just drives home the solitary clone thing, because when Cody leaves and becomes his own solitary clone, right? It leaves Crosshair again without a friend, because even at the end he's like, I can't report to Cody. It's like a sad dog.
Yeah.
So yeah, I find this episode very good. Cody mentions that he heard that the rest of the Bad Batch all went rogue after Order 66 came through, but he's not necessarily surprised, considering how Clone Force 99 was, quote, different by design. Crosshair pushes back here by mentioning how regular soldiers, the regs, have gone AWOL as well. By the way, for those who may not be aware, AWOL means absent without official leave, for those who may not know. And I find this interesting because it's not clear to me if they're referencing people like Cut, or they're referencing more recent events where other clones have gone AWOL since Order 66.
I think it's more recent. Like, I don't think they would care or be referencing like those kind of outskirts ones. I think it would be more recent stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I guess, yeah, because you guys guess he was he not on Ryloth when I can't remember that commander's name. It's been referenced now a couple times, and I just can't remember it. It's like Dozer or something really cool. Hauser. Captain Hauser, such a cool name. When he kind of like throws down his helmet and is like, "This is wrong," right?
Yeah.
I wonder if that's what he's thinking about.
Could be, yeah.
So this prompts a comment from Cody about, quote, more and more clones have been questioning the order, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the line from the trailer, and this feels like he's kind of testing the waters with Crosshair. Like, how do you feel about this stuff?
Yeah.
Right? And I note how he kind of like looks away. He can't look him in the eye, and he kind of looks up at the memorial, instead of continuing the conversation the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Crosshair says that, of course, those clones are traitors just like the Jedi.
Right.
Cody's look is very interesting here. He
just gives
this kind of like, this little like, okay, interesting.
Right? See, I saw it slightly different. Like, as soon as Crosshair kind of says that about the Jedi or traitors like the Jedi, like Cody looks down for a second and then at him, and it's almost like I feel like he's like thinking about Kenobi and what he did. You know what I mean?
100%. I don't think you referenced the word Jedi without and Cody in the same scene without him.
Yes.
Without instantly calling back to the scene where he shoots Obi-Wan off of his lizard.
Yeah. Like, I feel like he's thinking about that at that moment. And just
he
being
has
like,
to be.
Yeah. It's because I feel like there's probably a lot of those clones had remorse after that.
Yeah, I'm sure that that's the thing. I have to imagine we're going to explore that concept further in this season, right? You don't bring it up here and just leave it at that.
Exactly.
So
yeah,
I think I'm very excited. So yeah, I love that we've gotten to the point, because when I was watching some of the recaps of this episode and the breakdowns, they flash back to like episodes like the rookies and stuff like that from the Clone Wars from the first season, and the ability for those characters to emote was extremely limited. Like, they barely moved their face, their body barely moved, like very stilted.
Right.
But we're at a point now where we can read the emotion on the face of Cody, and I think that's kind of pretty impressive. And
yes.
cool.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's kind of where we leave that. Any other thoughts on on that kind of exchange between Cody and Crosshair?
No, I don't think so. Like that, those are kind of like the main things that I picked up on.
Mm-hmm.
In their first interaction there.
So on board the transport, Cody tells his squad what they know, or more accurately, what they think they know, or what they were told by the Emperor Empire, which is basically fake news. It's like it's spun propaganda. And they believe that, or they're told that Tawny and her leaders are separatist insurgents that seized the city with a battalion of battle droids and took Governor Groton hostage. The last part is true. They did take Groton hostage.
Yes.
But the rest is kind of like not accurate. The squad is surprised to hear about the battle droids, wondering why they didn't get the shutdown order. The shutdown order, of course, is the when in Revenge of the Sith, after Anakin murders all the Separatist leadership on the fiery planet. What's the word? What's that one again?
Mustafar?
Mustafar. On Mustafar, he kills all the Separatist leadership and then deactivates the droid army.
Yes.
So that's the shutdown order that's being referenced there. Basically turned off all the battle droids across the galaxy. But Crosshair is quick to remind everyone that they could have been reprogrammed, especially if you had like a whole battalion that wasn't being used.
Easily.
You have months to reprogram them all. Like, sure, why not?
Yeah. We see those, they get reprogrammed all the time. Like,
yes, we also saw it in Rebels. We saw it.
Clone Wars.
We saw it last season in the Bad Batch, actually.
Yeah,
so,
you see it all the time. It's funny. Yeah. You're like, oh yeah, they're just very easily turned.
Yeah, exactly. So they do admit that Desix is expecting them on a diplomatic envoy, which is going to allow them the element of surprise, but they don't question that at all. So again, they're used to committing war crimes, so it's not a big deal. So we're back on Desix, and as the clones are granted access to Desix airspace, we cut to Governor Groton, who's being held in the castle with 2 B1s guarding him. Always nice to see the B1s back in action, get those fun lines of dialogue. There's some really good B1 dialogue in this episode.
There is. I
really like the one where he's like, "Nice shot," and they like high five. That's like classic. That's like season 1 B1 battle droids.
It is, yeah.
Which are, in my opinion, insufferable.
Oh, I love it. They're so goofy and dumb.
They are the worst in that first season, right? And they like have this like weird emotional. They're like way more emotional than you would expect them to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Roger. Like they're like sassy. You're like, what are you talking about?
But like also kind of whiny sometimes. It's really funny. Yeah.
Yeah. What an odd design choice for a soldier. So Tawny arrives and tells Groton that he'll be free when Desix is free. Now, let's take a moment here. I mean, to pause and think about this. Governor Groton's plan not Groton's plan, but Tawny's plan is bad. It's a bad plan because
I mean, yeah.
There's no end game here. There is no way. There's no world in which you survive by taking this imperial governor hostage. There's no way in which you survive because the emperor's not going to bow down. The second that they try to come to some diplomatic solution with a backwater planet like Desix, the whole system falls apart. You can't let one planet basically dictate its own rules under this imperial system, right? So I get the impression that she's kind of like she knows she's Walking Dead, and she's doing this out of like her like a final moral stand, and to say like I'm sending a message, and I know it'll cost me my life, or something along the lines of that, or she'd rather die fighting than live under the Empire, or something like that. Which of course we get an amazing version of that in Andor. So yeah, it's just interesting. Any thoughts on Governor Tawny's plan here?
Yeah, I mean, to me, very similar. It's obviously a terrible plan. And yeah, it's just very funny to me because she's already to me has seen the fall of everything, right? And the fallout of what is happening on other worlds, but I guess is just thinks that she can still control her own, right?
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because it's like, okay, so you were a separatist because there was other independent worlds
Yeah, like
in during
Mandalore. That was
yeah,
like neutral.
exactly,
Yeah.
right, that were neutral during the war, but clearly Desix wasn't because it had a battalion of battle droids, and she
Yeah.
knew Count Dooku, and she references events from the Clone Wars and stuff that her colleague was associated with. So,
Oh yeah.
so
Do you remember who that is?
well, she's a character in an episode of the Clone Wars I haven't seen in years. So,
Oh, okay. Okay, so there's a whole arc kind of about her. So
yes,
she's friends with Padme.
mm-hmm.
What's her name? Whatever. Bonteri.
It's yes,
So
Bonteri.
she's
Mm-hmm.
friends with Padme, and Padme and Ahsoka go there to
Yeah,
their home
it's
world.
like a girls only mission.
Kind
Yeah,
of, yeah, and because they're just discussing, I guess, I don't know, politics, right?
yeah, yeah.
But because that's where Ahsoka meets Lux Bonteri.
Right.
And Lux
Yes.
is the one who gets involved with Death Watch and all that stuff, and you know what I mean. So,
Mm-hmm.
and then he ends up fighting with Saw and Saw's sister later on. It's a whole, yeah. That's
It's a whole
basically
thing,
how,
right?
yeah, Ahsoka meets Lux Bonteri, which is
I
interesting.
mean, it's funny you mentioned that because I think the reason I didn't pick up on that chain of events is because a lot of the Clone Wars is aired out of order. So it's
Yeah,
like who knows if if which order I watch those episodes in to like connect those dots. But
gotcha. Yeah, yeah.
Um, is Lux Bonteri the guy that that Anakin gets jealous of?
That Anakin gets jealous
Yeah,
of.
he gets really jealous. And that's another senator I'm thinking of, right? He gets
No,
really
oh no, 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 no. That's he's the one that takes over the banks at one point.
right. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
Lux Bonteri is the one that like they kind of allude that like Ahsoka has a crush on him, but
Okay.
he's got like a flirty thing going on with Saw's sister later on, and then she
Oh,
dies
right.
and all
Yes.
that kind of
And that
stuff.
turns
So
Saw into a maniac.
a
Yep.
lunatic, yeah.
Yeah.
No, no, no. I can't remember who you're thinking of. It's funny because I just watched those episodes the other day, but
Right.
yeah, no. But
Anyway,
yeah,
don't worry
it
about that.
doesn't
Don't worry
matter.
about that. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, she tries to have her cake and eat it too. She's like, we're not a part of we're not under imperial jurisdiction. It's like, well, you did lose the war. You were involved in the war, and of course, she doesn't know that the whole puppet thing. So it's like you were on the losing side of the war. What did you expect to happen? So
Right.
you're not, you know, So I like the idea. I guess she's kind of basically willing to sacrifice her battle droids. At least it's not actual people. For this kind of like last moral stand. So anyway, it's an interesting concept.
Well, and I've also found it really interesting to think about separatists who still exist. That okay, to them, what Dooku was saying, like kind of how she brings it up about how like he said this was going to happen, that the Republic was going to turn into something worse. And that does happen from like the view of the separatists, but then like, you know what I mean? And then the separatists now are basically rebels. And it's like, so we go from having separatists that our beloved Jedi are fighting because they're the bad guys, and then all of a sudden it just like flips.
Yeah, so I think
it's very interesting.
Kind of there's a lot of layers here. So the separatists, if you kind of step back from the political angle of it, were just independent planets that wanted to operate under a different set of rules, right?
Yes,
they didn't feel like they were being taken care of by the Republic and wanted to do their own thing, right? Now the Republic, from a political standpoint, that separatist army was being led by Count Dooku and General Grievous, and they come off as villains because they do villainous things.
Well, right? Yeah, they're doing bad stuff. They're taking over other worlds and like taking all their stuff and their resources, and like they're doing bad shit. But
the original kernel of the idea was sound, right? And I think was just, right?
Yes.
And now that you stripped away that kind of corrupt separatist leadership, you're just left with these individual planets that are just like, we never wanted to be a part of this,
right?
And they're kind of being painted with the same brush as Dooku and Grievous. And I mean, even think about Dooku. That even in Revenge of the Sith, they're like, it can't be Dooku. He's a political idealist. Remember they call him that?
Yes.
And
yes.
basically, to the outside world, Dooku is just like a political leader who was disillusioned with the Republic, right?
Yes.
And so there's this idea, and of course the separatists are name checked, by the way, in Andor. I mean, we're gonna have to start a counter for how many Andor references we can make, per episode of the Bad Batch. But they're name checked when Saw is listing out the different factions of the rebellion.
Oh
right?
yeah,
You got the separatists are one, and there's like the neo Republicans and the yada yada yada, right? And the Gorman Front and the yada yada yada, right? They are rebels now, but it's just all perspective.
It is.
So
it's very interesting. But that's
really
what I mean about this episode, that it really makes you like kind of have to think differently about some of these characters and some of these groups from how we thought about them in the Clone Wars.
Yes. So this actress, she takes off her helmet. Tawny does, and we get to hear her non-distorted voice for the first time this episode. Familiar voice probably to many. Tawny's voiced by Tazia Valenza, who is a longtime voice actress, veteran, and actually is a Star Wars veteran as well. Has been in a lot of video games as well as some TV. She actually played Shaak Ti in the Clone Wars. Is her probably most famous, or maybe not most famous, but most direct line to the Bad Batch. But she also plays as Poison Ivy in the Arkham games. She's been in Star Wars: The Old Republic, a bunch of different voices in there. Elder Scrolls Online, Hearthstone, lots of video games. Injustice 2, Star Trek Discovery, Star Wars Resistance. She actually plays another character in Star Wars Resistance. So yeah, so she's been in a lot of stuff. So
yeah, her voice and her character kind of threw me off at first.
They feel very familiar.
If they do, and I thought for a quick second that she wasn't using her real name. Like I was like, oh, maybe, and that it was like Sabine Wren's mom, because they look kind of similar, and they do kind of sound similar. And I was like, wait, and I was like, no, that doesn't make sense, because like Mandalorians weren't separatists either; they were neutral. So I was like, I immediately kind of dismissed it in my own brain. But
they're already kind of being under, being subjugated by the Empire.
For like a quick split second, I was like, holy shit, is that Sabine's mom?
That would be really cool.
But
also
not.
She dies, so
yeah.
Anyway, Shaak Ti is here, and she talks about, you mentioned this already, she talks about how Count Dooku was right about the Republic's corruption and that it would collapse into something worse. She says that he always knew about the Empire. Now, I find that the specific wording is interesting, because Dooku, I think, actually, now that I'm saying it out loud, I'm not sure. Did he or did he not know about the long-term plan for post-war Palpatine?
I'm pretty sure he did, because Dooku is Palpatine's apprentice, and like Palpatine's a Sith Lord, right? So I'm pretty sure Dooku is like in on a lot of it. Like maybe not about Order 66 per se, but I don't know.
Right, because like
I get so confused when I try and think about who knew about like Order 66 and like the full plan.
Basically no one.
But
no one. Yeah. Right. And it's
but I mean, like, he did know that Palpatine was a Sith Lord, and he knew that they were both like Siths.
Yes.
And that kind of shit, right? So it's like he knew some, but
well, I think it's interesting because like even Maul, right, in the final episode of the Clone Wars, when he's in that little like that
box
thing that he's in, that
so
box,
cool.
and he's kind of like, oh, it's happening, the thing that we planned all those years ago or whatever.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So, but for whatever I got the impression that Palpatine kind of kept things close to his chest. I mean, obviously, but specifically from Dooku. So it's did he know about specifically when he was saying the Republic's corruption would collapse and it would become something worse, the Empire? Is he specifically talking about what he thought would happen?
But Dooku was also. Dooku also, fuck, I can't remember. Didn't he have something to do with setting up the clone army in general? Because he's Lord Tyrannus.
No. Maybe. I mean, he has a relationship with
Sifo Dyas. Yeah, I'm like that's what I mean. That's why it's so complicated, because it's like there's Sifo Dyas, but then Tyrannus captures him and gives him to the Pikes or whatever, and then Sifo Dyas goes crazy and like all that kind of stuff, right? So
he was already kind of crazy.
Well, yeah. So yeah, it's all complicated and convoluted, and who knows?
Yes.
But
yeah. Okay, but anyway, we're getting off topic here. It's interesting. Anyway, it's just an interesting concept about kind of what Dooku didn't know and kind of what he told people in his political sphere.
Yes.
Anyway, So now we get to the big action sequence. We can probably fly through this pretty quick. As their shuttle arrives, we see that a tactical droid is watching, and Tawny orders for them to shoot down the shuttle and prepare for a fight. She always knew that the envoy wasn't going to be peaceful.
Yes.
The initial shots take out the shuttle pilot, and it crashes into the nearby fields. Again, kind of shocking to see the droids being so capable here.
Right.
But I think the idea is to kind of make the tactical droid feel very important. So
yeah, usually when we see them, it's like it does make the battle a little bit more difficult for them.
mhm.
So in the past, it's been kind of like that too, because as soon as there's a tactical droid, it's like, oh shit, they kind of know what they're doing.
Yeah,
So
darn.
yeah, yeah.
So they take out the shuttle fairly easily. A squad is dispatched to find out if there's any survivors. And they initially report that there isn't any, but it's a trick by Cody and his squad, as they wait until the B1s report back and then take them out, buying them a little bit of time. But we find out that half the squad is injured, or probably worse, after the crash. So they have to go in with only, I want to say 6. No, there's 6 by the time they get into the city, but there's a little bit slightly more than that at this point. Desix has this like big, obviously it's got this big castle essentially, and it's got this big walkway up and only one way in, and a tank is guarding the entrance, so that's really cool. And back in the Clone Wars days, they probably would have used those like their, I can't remember what they're called. They weren't AT-ATs, they're like the AT-LTs or whatever, the six-legged tanks to like walk up the. Remember that one episode of Clone Wars where they walk up a mountain, a cliff?
Yeah, kind of. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Silly. But Crosshair has a different plan, and his plan involves drawing the fire of the tank while the others go and get into position. And what follows is a very badass sequence where he shoots straight down the barrel of the tank to blow it up. Now,
Yeah.
It's silly, but it's also like super cool in my opinion, because he's like playing basically
Right.
chicken with the tank.
Yeah. And this is also his skill, right? Like,
Right.
and I was thinking about that too, and it's like, oh, is this too much? Is this dumb? But at the same time, it's like, this is
No.
exactly what Crosshair is genetically designed to do, is to be this
Yes.
good at
But
sharpshooting.
to be fair, the mirror stuff is dumb.
I knew you were gonna get mad about that. I was like, oh, the mirrors are coming out. Jules is gonna get mad again.
I forgot about the mirrors, to be honest.
Yeah.
I forgot they existed, and they are stupid. So,
Yeah.
but it is what it is. They actually make them seem way cooler in this episode.
I did like the way they used them in that tower. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he blows up the tank. I love the sound effects they make as the blaster bolt goes through the barrel of the tank. I thought that was really cool, like a thump.
Yeah.
That was like really cool.
That was a good sound effect. I like when sound effects are like quiet ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's like it has more to do with like the silence of it than the, you know what I mean? Like than the loud.
It's more subtle.
But yeah, I like that. Muffled.
Afterward, Cody loses some clone. This is so. I saw someone mention this on Twitter, and I have to agree, which is that like seeing clones die post season 1 finale of the Bad Batch, knowing that there's no more clones coming, feels a lot weightier to me.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And I don't know. Maybe like this is supposed to be this is Cody's squad. You'd think they'd be better trained than this, but like they're just on that bridge, just being blown up by RPGs. Like it's not even.
No,
they're not. They like take some cover. They must lose like another like 4 or 5 clones at this moment. It kind of annoyed me, but they're shooting these RPGs from the battlements. Crosshair takes out most of them, and Cody rappels up the wall. Can you rappel up something? He uses those like that grappling hook thing.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
I like that. I thought that looked cool. I was like,
yeah,
cool.
it was cool. I mean, I forgot that they had those tools. They've used them before. It's kind of like very Batman-esque. And they go in there and they capture the entrance. They surmise that there must be a tactical droid because they keep coming in coordinated waves. So they decide to split up to divide their forces. We also learned some more clone names, which I thought was quite cruel. Weiler and Nova.
I know, hey.
Doesn't get any names. They're just nameless clones. The tactical droid recognizes the move that they're making and kind of like jumps into action. I liked, again, just like last week when we had the clones being very capable bad guys. now we have this tactical droid being very capable. I appreciated it. Also, like that it was a female tactical droid
Oh,
or a
me
female
too.
voice.
I
Yeah.
always like when they give them like kind of a female voice. It's I don't know. It just looked kind of cool.
Well, it's like then you got Tawny and her like they just it kind
Hmm.
of feels like more natural kind of partnership.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe she reprogrammed this
Yeah.
tactical droid to be female, which is like kind of cool. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like that touch every once in a while.
So Cody and his squad make their way through the city. First, we kind of see this again, reverse of what we typically see back in the Clone Wars days, which would be like them trying to comfort the locals, saying we're here to help, don't be afraid, yada yada yada. But it doesn't really work this time, and it isn't really received that well. And as they're kind of, he doesn't really have time to process this because they hear the tell. I loved how they did this because they play the sound effect of the rolling droidicas, the
Yeah.
destroyers, and and I also really I've always loved how they've treated the droidicas as being like particularly dangerous,
Yes.
you know,
Yes. Yeah.
and I so they're like droidicas, take cover. They're like right away they like roll in and they pop their shields, and man, Weiler just gets absolutely murdered. Like
Right.
4 or
Yeah.
5 blaster bolts to the chest as he goes flying over a banister.
Yeah.
Ouch.
It's violent.
Yes.
Yeah, those droidicas are always cool. I
Yes.
just like seeing them. I like the way they roll around too, and like, oh yeah, they're just, yeah, they're one of my favorite like styles of droid.
I didn't know that they were called droidicas for a long time.
Oh really?
Because
Yeah.
they call them destroyers in episode 1. Obi-Wan calls them destroyers.
Gotcha.
And droidica is such a silly word that
Oh really? Okay, to me it sounds cooler. I don't know why, but
I mean, destroyer is really cool. Droidica sounds more Star Warsy, but it's a kind of like anyway. It's a cool word. It's fine.
yeah.
So I also really like how they show Nova try to throw his like grenade through the shield, but it
yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
Because we're kind of used to that. There literally was a whole episode dedicated to learning how to do that.
Yeah, to doing it properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
got to roll it real slow, but
real
just enough for it to roll under their shields.
Right.
Yeah, or for them to walk over it.
He's got to like go like backhand over banister, then let it drop and roll.
Well,
that's pretty hard to do. So it doesn't work. They have to make a hasty retreat, and they kind of get pinned down again. And the droidica attacks with some B1s from kind of a high point, and we got to see something that we've never seen before, which is a new way to kill a droidica. And I was very pleasantly surprised by the way that they did this, which was
yes.
Cody sticks him with the grenade, and then Crosshair shoots the B1 in the head so that it like falls over into the droidica like, through the shield, and then
destroys it. Yeah, it's pretty cool how I like how he kind of slowly sinks through.
Yeah, I love
the shield. It's very interesting. It's like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Right. So they start making their way into the castle and are ambushed by commando droids. So we kind of get like every kind of droid except for the B2s, the super battle droids here.
Yeah. I do like those. I like those commando droids though. They're always really cool.
They are.
They're kind of like assassin droids almost, and they can like crawl on the ceiling and stuff. They're usually
really
pretty cool
to play as in Battlefront 2.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, they're ambushed by commando droids who take out Nova. Also gets a brutal death. Where all his grenades fall out and he explodes on top of them.
Yeah, and like Cody kind of like calls
Nova!
Out to him.
Right?
Yeah, it's sad.
It is sad. He's pulled back by Crosshair just
and that's what I mean, where you're kind of like you're rooting for them, even though they're kind of the bad guys, and you're like, wait,
but
why do I care? But I don't,
ones.
and I kind of like them, but they're bad, and it's like it messes with your brain.
Cody and Crosshair are trapped in a spiral staircase, very like medieval style.
Oh, you know what? This is going to be a really like probably annoying thing to say. This looks so much like the Belfry Tower that's in Bruges. Like I don't know if you've ever seen the movie In Bruges with Colin Farrell.
It's literally on my list. I've been meaning.
It's such a good movie. It's a very very good movie. But I went there once, and it's the exact same. It's very narrow, and it winds up.
Isn't
like really
every
tall.
Spiral staircase in a castle look the same?
I guess, but it's because they're going up to the bell tower though, because that's where they said the or the commander droid is, right? So I just thought it was really cool because they're made specifically like that because tactically they're easier to defend when you're in them because it's harder to defend when you're going up.
You can't shoot up the stairs.
Yes,
Basically, with
like it's
arrows
easier
or
to
anything.
you need minimal people to like defend them from
Right.
high up.
It's a choke
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. So I was like, oh, like that's like looks like the Belfry Tower. I don't know if that's on purpose or not, or that's just how
I
they're
think
all
it's
looking,
designed to
but
look like a
it's just kind
medieval
of cool.
tower. I think is what it's supposed to
Yeah,
look
it's
like.
just very cool. I was like, oh, that's neat.
So they're trapped in this tower, and Crosshair uses his mirror pucks to shoot around the corners, which feels like cheating. And there's a moment where a droid grabs Crosshair, and Cody takes out one with a knife before throwing the knife through the other droid's head, and it's very cool. So
it's very Hunter-like.
yes,
too.
very Hunter-like.
Yeah, and I liked. I don't know if they're. I haven't paid enough attention to those vibro braids. Are they always orange, or are they sometimes
I don't
blue?
think so.
I feel like they're
bet you that
different
one's
colors.
orange because his
That's what I
armor used
was
to be
kind of
orange.
thinking. I was like,
Yeah.
hey, he's got an orange vibro braid. I wonder if that's like on purpose.
He's saving his. He's kind of like
Yeah.
hiding some of his personalization. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I was like, I wonder.
So that's a really cool moment. Next, Crosshair gives Cody a puck because he's like choking or whatever. He's like, I can't go on. To throw into the room. This is so weird to me because it feels like an odd way to end this badass action sequence. So here, take the puck and throw it into the room. That's all he needs to do.
Yeah.
And actually, like, despite that being silly, I really like the shot of him being handed the puck and Cody putting on his helmet, and then the camera pans over around his shoulder as he throws it. It's a very kind of very cool stylized shot. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it is.
And anyway, Crosshair makes the shot because he always does. We kind of get this like close up of him aiming into the mirror. I think this is the first time like we've seen it like so reflective, you know. And we kind of like see the outline of the tack droid in the spinning puck.
Yeah.
It's cool, I guess. I don't love it, but
again, I just whenever I see something that I think is a little too much, I'm like, ugh, I have to tell my brain like it's how he's like engineered.
Yeah, but it's still
it
doesn't make any. It just doesn't. It's not possible.
It's all his character has is like being able to shoot good.
Being a good sniper, he's already very good at that.
Yeah.
I actually am like fine with the shooting down the barrel of the tank.
That's true.
I'm this is he's shooting mirrors.
I would say
it doesn't make any sense.
And I don't know if that last shot, to me, it looks like it hits the mirror and then bounces off two of those commando droids, and then
it does that too.
So I'm kind of like, hey, how come sometimes they bounce off the droids and sometimes they don't?
Consistent. It's not consistent, and that happened.
But I'm like,
it's a
nitpick.
Too.
It's a nitpick because I'm like,
but it's a fair one, I think.
Yeah, because sometimes I'm like, okay, well, if your blaster bolts are going to bounce off of them, then how do you?
Yeah, what do you even need the thing for? The puck.
Well, that and like, how do you avoid your shot coming right back at you?
Yeah, I don't know. He has to like hit it just exactly right so it ricochets.
Yeah, I guess
just the way he.
That's true.
Anyway,
that's just funny. But yeah, it's a nitpick.
Yeah, it is, and if again, like I said, a fair one. So then we get to this really cool standoff scene, and Tawny has Groton hostage at gunpoint. And they're alone in this bell tower. And she tries to reason with Cody by reminding him that they separated from the Republic and that they're independent. Cody says that he's not there to debate politics. I love that line because I'm pretty sure Rex said it at one point too.
Oh.
But they're not here to debate politics. But I think that also might be like a kind of a thinly veiled like shout out to those fans who are like, I don't want politics in my Star Wars. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we've already talked about how dumb that is.
Yeah, I agree. We have talked about it, but I think this is the show saying it's dumb.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's and so she rebuts by shining a light on kind of the hypocrisy of their actions, right? It's like
yes,
and his orders. He's like, we have official Imperial orders and stuff like that. It's like, okay, whatever. And that they're she reminds them that they were just defending themselves, and this kind of I think is initially. Has a little bit of impact, but he hasn't quite kind of come to terms with the whole concept yet.
Right.
Cody uses the standard Imperial line about quote unquote establishing peace and order throughout the galaxy, to which she says she used to believe in peace, and then she references that Clone Wars episode that you mentioned with Mina Bonteri.
Yes.
And I kind of like this idea that she was involved in that, but we just never really saw.
Yeah.
And she how they tried to find a diplomatic solution to the war, but it was rejected by Palpatine. And then she says, at that moment, I learned that peace was never an option. So it also does explain a little bit more about kind of why she's motivated to take these actions, which is she doesn't believe that peaceful outcomes will actually solve the problem because she knows the Empire is not motivated by anything but violence. So I guess that's why she feels like she needs to kind of fight fire with fire, I suppose. Peace was never an option was also a line from the trailer, so it's very cool. So I love this moment where Cody puts down his gun and his helmet and he says, "It is an option now," right? And promises a peaceful resolution in an attempt to prevent another war and prevent more bloodshed. He just saw 2 of his clone friends just murdered for no good reason, and he's like, "We just finished a war. I don't need to start another." I think, at this point, this is interesting to me because she's so dyed in the wool of peace is not an option, yada yada yada. But I think at this point she's surrounded, right? She's backed into a corner.
Yeah.
She really doesn't have any other choice, and if she really wants to stand by her morals, she has to let him go, right? And she, as we said before, I think she knew she was the Walking Dead, so she agrees to release Groton, who immediately calls for her execution.
He's such a weasel, and like they all are always, yes. But I find him especially weaselly.
Well, I think we often see the governors of like the Outer Rim planets, and they're like not the best and brightest of the Empire,
they're really not.
Right?
Like, well, I mean, they're not going to send their best and brightest.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's like whatever.
Exactly.
Send this bootlicker out there.
We get someone's kid or some some
nepotism
bullshit or whatever.
A nepo baby.
Yeah, exactly. It's just how TikTok-y of you. So yeah, he immediately calls for execution. He's like, "Well, I didn't promise a peaceful resolution, so kill her." It's like, oh my god, you're such an idiot. And then her response is, so much for peace.
Yeah.
Right? And that guts Cody because at first he's like, "Sir, I promised a peaceful resolution," and just as he's like threatened with disciplinary action, Crosshair takes a shot.
Yeah, which we all knew was going to happen.
Oh yeah, totally. Actually, like 100%. I think at the moment that we got in there, I kind of felt like it would have happened sooner. To be honest,
I was actually surprised. I was going to say I thought it was going to happen sooner. I thought Crosshair because he could. I thought he was just going to take her out,
kill her without hurting him easily.
Oh yeah, easily. Exactly. We just saw him shoot down a barrel of a tank from like 1,000 yards away. So. Yeah, I was just expecting like, oh, for sure Crosshair's going to do it. But again, this is kind of like Cody needs these little like disillusionment. He needs these little extra nudges to like keep, the Empire keeps letting him down and keeps showing him.
Well, I think what's interesting about this is that like we haven't seen Cody since Order 66.
Well, yes, yeah.
And we don't know what he's been through or what the things he's had to deal with, but we know that this one is extra bad.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think what's actually interesting, like this is really interesting as well, is Crosshair's decision to take the shot happens only once Groton threatens Cody.
Yes, yeah, it's true.
I think that for Crosshair, he sees himself as being so lost, right?
Yeah.
There's no saving me, so I can take the shot. I can kill this person.
Interesting.
I've already done so many terrible things that I can't, what's another? What's one more? Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And
I didn't think
gives
about
him an
like
opportunity to save Cody from having to go through that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
And that's why I think that line at the end where he says, what makes us different from battle droids is that we have to make our own choices, our own decisions.
Yes.
And then we have to live with those. And that line where we have to live with those is like gut-wrenching, I think, it seems like, to Crosshair.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this is the first time we've seen him since. I mean, there's a moment of gratitude at the end of season 1 when he leaves himself on Camino. But I think overall he was steadfast with his mission. I think we can still debate whether or not his chip is in his head or not.
Right.
He says it was removed. I think at this point it doesn't matter because
no, I don't think it matters either.
it's clearly that the chips that are in Cody and everyone else, it doesn't seem to matter at this point.
Yeah.
So I kind of lost the thread there a bit, but this idea that this might be the first step towards what I think will eventually be Crosshair sacrificing himself for the greater good at the end, right?
Right.
He's not going to get the full redemption right off into sunset type moment. Star Wars does sometimes do that, right? Where someone who's terrible, think of Vader, gets a kind of a last moment, and he also dies, to be fair, saving, for the greater good. But like, it's a common Star Wars trope, I don't think you do an episode like this if you're not setting up Crosshair to eventually do another heel turn.
Right. Yeah.
So
fair enough. Yeah.
I guess heel turn is not the right word. Heel turn would be turn to become a heel, which is be another bad guy, but to turn face, I guess.
Yes.
Anyway, where were we? She's dead. Grattan's very pleased. What did you make of that after the moment where Crosshair shoots her, and then it pans to Crosshair and it goes boom?
Yeah.
What did you make of that?
I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily made anything of it, but I was just like, yeah, like that checks out. That
really hammering that home, I guess.
Yeah.
But it does feel it's a little silly.
Dun,
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. You might as well have just done that. And then of course we get the classic Imperial move, which is hang the body in the square as a sign. We also get this long shot of Cody lingering to stare at the body alone as smoke comes off of her chest. It's like, yikes. After the battle, we see this gorgeous establishing shot of the city with a Star Destroyer hanging in low orbit or low in atmosphere, low overhead. It's so reminiscent of Jeddah. Like the design of the castle is very similar to Jeddah, and then the Star Destroyer over top, but in reds and browns and oranges. It's beautiful. And then the music here, this is kind of where we get that really eerie synthy string.
Yeah.
That reminds me of Order 66.
It's almost like violin kind of. I got too.
Yeah, it's the music in this episode is like next level good. I just really can't, like, he is operating at peak performance here.
Yeah, it's very kind of haunting and ominous and sad. Like it's got all those like feels mixed into it.
We see that more Imperial soldiers are being offloaded and taking control of the city and its people. TK troopers here, obviously, I think it's important to note, not clone troopers.
Yeah, and you know what? I feel like Cody, there's like a weird lingering look that Cody sees that, and I think there's like, I think it means something, like he's watching, the general turns and gives him that look, and he watches these, TK troopers come out, and he's just kind of, like I feel like
he
to
gives
him
a big sigh too.
Like I think to him it's just another one of those realization moments of he's on the bad team.
You're on the wrong side. Are we the baddies?
Yeah, you're on. Yeah, you're the bad guy.
So I love that moment. The last sigh and the kind of the
puts his helmet on. It's
the walk onto the ship.
Bunch of your brothers just died again.
Yeah,
in front of you for nothing, and
worse than for nothing for evil. It's
to take over this backwater planet that Rampart doesn't even actually give a shit about.
Exactly. So we come back to Coruscant, and I was surprised. I thought the episode would end there, but it doesn't. We get back to the memorial, and Cody and Crosshair meet again. He asks Crosshair if he thinks the new Empire is making the galaxy better. And Crosshair's answer is, we're soldiers, we do what needs to be done, which is another, classic line of his. Cody responds by saying that they're different from battle droids because they make their own decisions. They have to live with those choices. And then, how this is funny, I mentioned this last week. I talked about how, like, the specific gait that clones have as they walk. Yeah. Cody has a very different gait as he walks here. He looks completely defeated as he walks away. He's kind of he doesn't have that same posture. He's slouched forward. His back is hunched, and it's much slower than we're used to seeing him move. And of course, we hear the sad music play over that as he walks away.
Yes.
And that, I mean, I don't know if this is the last time we see Cody. I would be surprised if it is, but if it is, it's one hell of a way to go out, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
it's certainly better than the last time we saw him.
I mean, well, yeah. I feel like we'll see him again eventually.
Yeah.
They leave it open-ended enough that
Isn't
he's
it
gone
wild that the
AWOL.
last time we saw Cody was literally when he shot Obi-Wan out of the sky?
Yeah, it's crazy,
and it's
hey?
been this so long. We haven't seen him since.
Yeah.
So Crosshair is called back to Rampart's office. Actually, hold on. Let's pause on that. Where do we think Cody ends up? Here's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
If you really want to redeem Cody, which I think the show is aiming to do, we know that he doesn't end up with Rex and Gregor and Wolf out on that backwater planet fishing for worms. Right?
No.
But
being insane.
Right. Being insane. That's just Gregor.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is the last we see of him. And
I don't think so
what's
either.
so fascinating too is that he disappeared on Coruscant. So he's actually on Coruscant the whole time, potentially, right? A place where you could easily disappear, right?
Yeah.
And, maybe he's, this is maybe, I'm being a little grasping at straws here, but maybe he's the one who leads the clone rebellion.
Yeah, you never know.
That gives him the ability to be redeemed. We get that redemption as he kind of makes a last stand for his clone brothers. That's my hope for him. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would like to see that. I would like to see him again and see him doing something and to continue with that story. Maybe he's the sad, poor clone that Obi-Wan gives money to in the Obi-Wan
no,
series.
because that's a 501st. And I think he would recognize Rex.
I know.
Or he'd recognize Obi-Wan.
I know.
Sure.
I know he would. It was just, just teasing. But I don't know. I just hope we get to see something from him, and that's not just it. But I feel like that's what they do on purpose. They kind of leave it open-ended so they can do something with it.
They can do whatever they want.
Yeah, like eventually, even if we don't come back to it this season or come back to him this season, it's still...
There's a story that could be told.
There's still a story
else,
there,
a
yeah.
Book
so
or a movie.
Yeah.
Or
I'd love to see it. I'd love to see a clone rebellion and what that looks like. So
yeah, and I don't know. I just think Cody's super cool, and it's cool that he gets this moment, and we'll be keenly keeping an eye on what happens with him from here on out.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nice that he kind of has this moment of kind of reflection, and I would. We get this great moment of reflection, but I wouldn't mind exploring it further. Like, tell us more about how you feel about trying to kill Obi-Wan. As far as he knows, he succeeded.
Yeah.
Right? So, anyway, off topic again. Crosshair is called back to Rampart's office. He's being ordered to another mission, but this time not with Cody, to Crosshair's disappointment. He's surprised and disappointed, I'd say. Rampart tells him that Cody went AWOL. I found it interesting how kind of like nonchalantly he mentions
Yeah, he
this.
tells him, yeah.
Yeah. He also doesn't know his name. He's like, why not Cody? And he's like, who? It's just like this one more kind of dehumanization. And then he makes a jab at clone loyalty, right? Probably to the most loyal clone at this point. He says, quote, "Clone loyalty does not seem to be as advertised anymore."
Well, and doesn't he also take a jab at Crosshair personally about clones leaving around him? Like that it's almost his fault. So it's
odd
interesting.
how these clones keep disappearing around you, isn't it? Right?
Yeah. Where it's like, oh look, you're such a piece of shit that even other clones don't like working with you. Yeah, or whatever. It's funny.
They would rather go AWOL than work with you again.
Yeah.
And so he's dismissed, and we see a shot of him walking down a hallway in his black armor, surrounded by regs in white. Cut to black with that same sad music playing over the credits. Superb episode.
So good.
Absolutely great. Loved every second of it. I'm going to quickly read a review. I've never done this before. It's only 2 paragraphs, so... This is from Ben Rayside. This is a review on IMDb, and it's just titled "Peak Batch?" ? The new episode, besides the first episode of season 1, and even this holds its own, might be the best episode of the show. The character work done here for our 2 lead characters is done so well. I especially love how they handle specific fan favorite character and his journey throughout his episode. The Empire is once again brutal in its tactics, and it's nice. It's a nice through line to see the start of what becomes a truly corrupt state in Andor. This episode is what drew me to the concept of the show, and this is kind of what resonated with me when I saw this, because it also was what resonates with me about the concept of the show.
Okay.
Clones trying to figure out their place in the galaxy, and that's exactly what I got here. If the team can keep this style up, this season will be a significant step up from season 1. Also, I don't know what Kevin Kiner was on, but it must have been the same thing as when he scored the season finale of Clone Wars. The music in the episode, particularly at the end, was so haunting and really drove home the message of the episode.
Yeah.
Great stuff.
Yeah.
One might even say peak. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. I think there was some kind of like backhanded compliment to season 1 there in the middle, but
yeah.
I don't think season 1 was bad. I thought it was great, actually. There's some highs and there's some lows.
Well, yeah,
but I think he's right in the sense that I think the show maybe it wanted to do just one more kind of mission of the week for the Bad Batch before it moved on to
could be to more like something more serious or bigger stakes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which would be cool. So I mean, we'll kind of see where it goes next week, but yeah, I mean,
Rex shows up next week is my guess.
Yeah.
Like honestly, because I mean, it's next week's episode's called Faster. That doesn't really give much of a hint, but the everything else we've seen from the trailer, as far as I could have to rewatch the trailer to know for sure, but there's still one line about Rex that hasn't been that we haven't seen yet.
Okay.
So that my hunch is that that will be the next one. So, any final thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of covered everything that I was, pumped about with this. Like, it was so good, and yeah, like I mean, it's my favorite so far. We've only had 3, so we'll see if the next one can top it or not.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be tough because I think this. It's my favorites right now are the season 1 opener, the episodes on Ryloth, the episodes where they confront each other on that scrapyard. Planet. Then this episode, in no particular order necessarily, but those are all like peak Bad Batch stuff to me. Largely, I think it depends on how they handle Omega going forward.
Yeah, that's true.
Can they prevent her from being super annoying?
Yeah.
And if so, then I think this show is going to do just fine. All right. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up there. Again, follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, Facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast, and head over to our website, towerbabble.ca, to find everything that we do. Get hyped for the Tobys coming very soon. Be a good conversation. I'm sure there'll be some Star Wars in there just to tease to the right audience.
Right.
Until then, we'll talk to you soon, and may the Force be with you. I haven't even